I really struggled with the idea that IT wanted to keep themselves separate from the business. They didn't want business people meddling in their IT stuff. And so I became known as the fixer, the person that if they're having a problem with an IT project, uh, they would put me in charge of the liaison work between me and IT, and I gained experience there and worked quite well in those situations. I finally was able to work for my dream company. I was able to go to work at Boeing. I had my first, what I thought would be my first real finance job. We get into a big senior manager meeting where he has all of his direct reports and all of their direct reports in the meeting. He decides that he's going to start with an icebreaker, so he tells a joke. And nobody laughed. Nobody giggled. And I looked around and there wasn't anybody really smiling either. And I go, oh man, what have I got myself involved in? Because they were very, very serious finance people. And I guess they didn't particularly appreciate his jokes. So he said, well, let's try another one. And so he tried a second joke. And I thought the jokes were pretty good, pretty funny. Um, Finance people are different than IT people. Finance people are usually IT's largest customer. So let's talk about the anatomy of a project, an IT project that's made for finance. IT managers, of course, are managing creatives. They understand that they're managing creatives, and they understand that they manage them in an agile format. One of the big things in the agile format is when we launch into a project, we're going to expect change. Then you go to the finance side, and finance is saying, well, gosh, IT said they could do it in 10 hours, and now all of a sudden it's taking 20. So both of these groups tend to look at each other with a little bit of suspicion. IT doesn't trust the requirements that they get. And finance people are going to say, I've got to have a budget for this. So here you have this management paradigm difference between the two organizations. Okay? You have finance wanting to know everything at the beginning. At the same time, you've got IT over here trying their best to give those kind of numbers to finance. And this rub between those two organizations has led a lot of large projects within large corporations to just go back to Waterfall. And with the thinking on the finance side that if I negotiate for the triple constraints at the very beginning, I'm going to get a definite schedule, a definite cost, and a definite resource level. That if I lock IT into that, then they're going to deliver based on these three items because that's what they promised me. At the same time, over on IT, they're going to be constantly uncomfortable. And in fact, as time goes on and they understand more about developing projects and being agile in doing so, they're going to become less and less comfortable with committing to those three things. So how do you overcome that? How do you overcome that big rub in how these two organizations function? You have to train the finance people in what IT management is all about, because IT management is fundamentally different than finance management. And you've got to train the finance people what to expect, when to expect it, how to expect it, so that they can then express to their managers how a project is going in agile terms. What happens if you don't do that? Okay, here's typical path of what happens, okay? IT has fallen into the trap of committing to a schedule and a cost. Okay, let's just work with those two things. They've committed to the schedule and the cost. Okay, the schedule says you're going to meet certain milestones at certain times. The cost thing says that when you meet this milestone, it's going to cost this much in the project. So on the finance side, they're looking at this definite schedule and definite cost. And in doing so, they're going to see, oh, but you're falling behind schedule. So all of a sudden, finance starts requiring IT to come to meetings each day to figure out how can you get back on schedule, how can you get back on cost, and there's an urgency, an urgency that develops in the finance management side, saying, "Oh no, we've got IT overrunning again. Oh no, they're not going to deliver it on time again," and this agitation that finance begins to feel with this commitment that IT has made all of a sudden becomes apparent. And when it becomes apparent, suddenly IT is required to come and give reports on a daily basis. So all of a sudden, the project managers over here, instead of managing the project so that they can remove roadblocks from the developers and do the things that project managers accelerate projects by doing, all of a sudden those project managers are spending a particularly large part of their time developing reports and developing information so that the finance managers over here can understand and do the things that they want to do. And so here you've encumbered the project with more processes and more work to do that is non-value added. The challenge is that it's so badly non-value added that it drags the program down even worse. It gives no benefit to the project to keep reporting out to management over here. They need to be focused on actually doing the work of getting back on schedule and being able to use less resources so they can get the cost structure back down. They need to be left alone, and management and finance has to be able to let them alone. Without being able to let them alone, the project gets even farther behind schedule and farther over cost. And the continual frustration keeps building and building and building to the point that when they finally push the project over the edge and deploy it, many times the project is deployed with less features than originally scoped. It's badly over budget, and all of a sudden the IT people are the bad guys. Both of these groups are looking at each other and shaking their heads saying, gosh, if finance had only. And on the finance side, they're saying, oh gosh, if IT had only. And that gulf just keeps getting wider as the distrust continues to build between the two organizations. So what's really happening is during this type of a project, during large projects, IT needs to make sure that finance understands how to manage an IT project. If they do that, then when it starts to come across challenges, the IT people can express those challenges in terms that IT understands, and management in finance will understand that based on the fact that they've been trained to expect it. So I hope this helps you understand those two management paradigms and the many things that we'll talk about in this channel later on. Thanks.